Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Sherry Collins, and I'm the Senior Director for the Office of Corporate Relations at the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. And for the last number of years, I've had the distinct pleasure of working alongside Governor Wolf and his team and the members that you see behind me today as we really strive to find solutions to Pennsylvania's ongoing broadband infrastructure challenges and trying to close the ever-present digital divide. If there's one thing that COVID-19 showed us is that there were a lot of challenges that we had as it related to making sure that people had access to high-speed internet. Our students, our educators, our businesses were all challenged during that time. But I have to say that prior to the pandemic, we traversed the Commonwealth. A lot of us that are standing up here today were out on the road really trying to shine a bright, bright light on the issue that we were having. And it is with such great pleasure that I report out to this group today that today was the first meeting of the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority. This authority was signed into law on December 22nd, 2021 by Governor Wolf after many conversations with members of the General Assembly and their staff, members of the governor's team, and of course the department, as we tried to create a piece of legislation that would really help us close this digital divide in PA and also get ready for the federal funds that will be made available in helping to address this issue. So today was a great day in Pennsylvania, for Pennsylvania. Again, we had our first meeting of this authority. We're really excited, but we also know that there is a lot of work ahead of us. I think that this board is a very diverse board, but it's bipartisan effort that is going to bring Pennsylvania into the 21st century, making sure that this broadband infrastructure is built out and that people in Pennsylvania can get connected. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you at this time Governor Tom Wolf, who has been leading the effort. Governor, it certainly has been my honor and pleasure to work alongside of you as we continue to move this very important issue forward. So Governor Wolf, thank you.
Thanks, Sherry, very much. So thank you, Sherry, and let me say that it's been a real privilege for me to work beside you as we've done this, because I think we recognize really early that Pennsylvania really needs to address this broadband issue, and I'm really happy that the General Assembly, all of us have come together on this. You know, sometimes we disagree, but on this we've really actually agreed that this is something that we ought to do, and I think it's really wonderful. So, and that's what I want to talk about, this big opportunity that is before us. We need to do this, and we have the means to do it. Over the past 7 years, our finances are in order in Pennsylvania. And I think, you know, the fact that we no longer have to try to figure out how we're going to find pennies in different corners of the Capitol gives us the ability to actually address some really felt needs of Pennsylvanians. Plus, we have the Infrastructure Investment Act that is really going to help us. But it's a tribute to how far we've come that we now are in pretty good financial shape. But I think it's also time for us to sit down and reflect on how far we have to go. Despite the successes we've had over the past 7 years with our financial situation, after 2 years of a global pandemic, a lot of Pennsylvanians are still really hurting. And now's the time for us to think big, to make big investments in the people of Pennsylvania. And we're aided in this through the Historic Infrastructure Investments Act that is coming out of Washington. And so we actually have been able to work across the great partisan divide here in Pennsylvania to really think about our economic future in ways that we haven't had to before. We have the ability financially to do things here in Pennsylvania, and we have the support of the federal government. One of the investments that we all recognize we need to make is in broadband, the internet connectivity. That's a really big investment that we need to make in our future and our prosperity. It's essential. It's essential today as water and electricity have been. The lack of consistent, affordable, quality statewide broadband keeps our children from learning. It prevents businesses from growing. The lack of connectivity limits the job market for workers, and it stops healthcare facilities from sharing medical information and doing the things they need to do. So again, this is not a red or a blue issue. It's something that hurts all of us, the fact that we have gaps in our broadband coverage. While rural counties, and especially counties in the northern tier, are badly hit by poor broadband access, you don't have to travel too far in and around our biggest cities. Same thing, to find people who are being left behind because broadband isn't accessible, or in some cases affordable. We know that at least 500,000 Pennsylvanians are without broadband, and the number could go to, we talked about this morning, 2.6 million Pennsylvanians who don't have adequate. And I know that's a subjective thing, but that's a lot of number. Slow speeds, the lack of affordable options keep usable broadband out of reach for many. And the lack of broadband in our communities is just slowing our economic growth. And that's why in 2018, we launched the Pennsylvania Broadband Investment Incentive Program. And the goal of this $35 million, I mean, by comparison with what's coming out of Washington now, that doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it was a lot of money back then, $35 million to expand broadband in rural areas with funding allocated to private providers who were bidding on service areas within Pennsylvania to try to make up the gap as to what they needed to actually get a return. And the incentives ensure thousands of homes and businesses in parts of Erie and Crawford, Potter counties, Tioga County, Mercer County, Lycoming, Bradford counties all have broadband access. In 2021, the Department of Community and Economic Development launched their Unserved high-speed broadband funding program. This was another $10 million. And all of these programs and projects have provided some relief to Pennsylvanians who want access to broadband. But the need in this area is still immense. And I'm really grateful to Senator Casey at the federal level and the Biden administration for recognizing this and advocating for broadband funding as part of that Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That funding has given Pennsylvania the opportunity to take the next step in expanding broadband access in a way that's going to create generational change for our Commonwealth. We've worked hand in hand with the General Assembly, House and Senate, Republican and Democrats, to establish the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority. Just had their first meeting this morning. House Bill 2071, which actually Act 96 of 2021, was negotiated over the course of a few weeks, and it was passed with unanimous support in both chambers, demonstrating the loud and clear importance of this issue to everybody here in the Capitol in Harrisburg. The authority will be the central point of contact to oversee and support broadband deployment all across Pennsylvania, and it will manage at least $100 million in federal aid. Now, $100 million, that's the figure because that's the minimum that any state is going to get. I'm pretty sure that Pennsylvania is going to get more than that. But think about what we were talking before, 30-some million, 10 million. We're now into hundreds of millions of dollars. The authority will support a coordinated and strategic rollout of broadband to more areas with construction of new towers, new lines, new broadband equipment, and all kinds of other things. With this investment and through strategic planning, we're going to close the digital divide. We're going to lower costs. We're going to bring new opportunities to communities all across the Commonwealth. So I want to thank the members of the General Assembly who worked hard to bring this project to life, and who have been and continue to be strong advocates for expanding affordable, reliable broadband all across Pennsylvania. I especially want to point out Pam Snyder. Representative Snyder and I are leaving, by the way, public service at the same time, right? You're retiring. Martin Kaulser, Representative Kaulser, Representative Carl Walker Metzger, and Senators John Kane, who's here, and where's John? Right here, John, and Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill, who was at the meeting this morning, couldn't be here this afternoon. All of them have worked tirelessly to forge partnerships and have done so in a collegial manner to serve the communities all across Pennsylvania. The creation of the Broadband Authority is one more step toward the future where all Pennsylvanians have access to the opportunities broadband provides. This investment in broadband is going to make a huge difference for students, teachers, business owners, farmers, residents throughout the state. And it's going to help our Commonwealth remain on the path to a really, really bright future. Now I'm going to turn things over to the person who's retiring the same time I am, Representative Pam Snyder.
Thanks, Governor. Thank you. Thank you, Governor Wolf. And I do want to thank you for your leadership on this. And Sherry Collins, her hard work has been unparalleled. She's been a one-man band for a long time on this issue, and she's done an amazing job. This is truly an incredible day. I started talking about this issue 5 years ago, along with then Representative Kristen Phillips-Hill, who is now Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill. She and I tried to shine the spotlight on it for quite a few years, but then along came a pandemic. And they say every cloud has a silver lining. Well, in my heart, the silver lining to the pandemic was that the spotlight was shined on this issue. Having access to high-speed internet affects every person in Pennsylvania, whether they realize it or not. The Pennsylvania Farm Bureau and the Pennsylvania Grange has walked hand in hand with us on this issue since we began, because they know the importance to the agricultural community, to our students at home, to telemedicine, especially during a pandemic. This issue is so critically important. We cannot have economic development in an area that does not have access to broadband. In my district, in the 50th, which encompasses all of Greene County, a portion of Fayette, and a portion of Washington counties, it is a huge problem. So many areas do not have access. So many areas do not have cell phone coverage. It's 2022. This is not how it should be. This authority that we have established, I have been in the State House for 10 years, and I have never seen a piece of legislation move so quickly. House Bill 2071, sponsored by Representative Kaulser and myself and 2 other members of the House, moved through the House Consumer Affairs Committee. And I want to recognize Chairman Rob Matzey and Chairman Jim Marshall of that committee for making sure that we got it right, for making sure that everything that was in Representative Kaulser's legislation would adhere to the federal regulations. Because I think it's important for the people back home to understand every state is going to get $100 million automatically to deploy broadband. But you heard the governor say it. Even that will not touch our needs here in Pennsylvania. By having this authority in place, by adhering to the federal guidelines, we now have the opportunity to secure part of the $42 billion that will be available to states across this nation. We must aggressively go after that, and we must make sure that every Pennsylvanian has access to high-speed internet. It is time. We cannot leave another generation behind. And if we do, it would be a travesty. So as the governor said, I am retiring at the end of the year, and my goal is to make sure that this authority is up and operational and functional so that I can walk out the door knowing I did my job as a state representative. So I want to thank everybody who's been a part of it, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Senator John Kane.
Great job. Good job.
Good afternoon, everybody. There's nothing better to see jobs coming into the state of Pennsylvania. I came from a background of construction, and I know that there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be in the development of broadband throughout the entire state of Pennsylvania here. I come from the counties of Delaware County and also Chester County, that's in my district. And we have the urban to suburban areas that definitely needed the broadband. One of the things that I'm mostly extremely proud of is the fact that we're going to be able to bring businesses into areas like the city of Chester, where broadband was underserved. Now we're going to be able to bring the 5G network into the city of Chester, where we're able to bring in companies that are going to come and hopefully open up shop there. I like to keep my my comments brief. I'm not a public speaker. I'm a plumber by trade, so I like to do things, get in, and we get paid by the hour back in the day. So I'd like to thank my colleagues for getting this passed. This is extremely hard work for Pam and the rest of the crew that have been working on this for years. I recently got elected. I hope that, you know, all legislation works this way over the next 3 more years that I have in office, and hopefully I'll keep my fingers crossed. And I want to thank the governor for signing this into law. So thank you so much for having me today. You can see how new I am at this. Now it's my turn to introduce Representative Martin Kaulser.
Thank you, Senator Kane, and good afternoon, everyone. It's certainly great to be here with all of you to talk about this very important issue. And believe it or not, we disagree about some things in this building. But this is one thing that we absolutely agree on, that broadband is a necessity. It is not a luxury. And the pandemic, as Representative Snyder stated, demonstrated that very clearly. As I was sitting here thinking about broadband and the work that we've done over the years on this topic, I was thinking about the first time that I ever spoke with Governor Wolf about broadband. Now, it was a few years ago, maybe the governor will remember, it was a few years ago, and he was traveling to a stop in Potter County at the hospital in Coudersport. Now, he got out of his car and he said to me, he's like, gee, I don't have any connectivity here across Route 6. And I said, welcome to Potter County, Governor. Now, since then, we've made a lot of progress. But with this legislation, we're going to make even more progress. This legislation, this bipartisan legislation, is truly a game changer for our state. The legislation enables us to create the broadband authority that has been discussed. The legislation will enable us to create the comprehensive statewide plan that is crucial to moving forward. Now, representing one of the most rural parts of Pennsylvania, I can tell you that I hear from constituents all the time who are still concerned about areas that are truly rural. Now, when I say truly rural, I'm talking about areas where houses are maybe more than a mile apart, or you might live at the end of a hollow or something like that. People are concerned about being left behind in those areas. They're worried about being left behind. But today, we're here to say, with this legislation, with the comprehensive plan that will be developed, we can ensure that no one will be left behind, and everyone will benefit from connectivity. And finally, the legislation will enable us to maximize the use of our broadband funding and spend it wisely to make sure that we can maximize this broadband connectivity across the Commonwealth and in every corner of the Commonwealth. So I also want to thank everyone who's been involved in this effort, thank my colleagues in the legislature, especially the chairman of the Consumer Affairs Committee, Representative Marshall and Senator Phillips Hill, and certainly special thanks to Representative Snyder and also to Senator Kane. This was a bipartisan effort. This is an effort that's going to benefit the Commonwealth for many years to come. And along with my colleagues in the legislature, I want to thank the governor for his support of this legislation, and also thank our hardworking staff. Our staff in the legislature put many, many hours into this legislation, and it is truly a quality piece of legislation, and I want to thank our staff very much. So thank you all very much. I forgot my job. My job is to introduce someone who's no stranger to us in the legislature, Darren Euchre, Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Bridging the digital divide has long been a priority of our organization, one we identified prior to the pandemic because it's the type of investment that is transformative to rural Pennsylvania. It took us time to get here, but on behalf of our organization, I want to thank the General Assembly and the governor for getting us here, for coming together in a strong bipartisan fashion to recognize that our state must put dedicated resources, planning, and investment towards bridging that digital divide. Our organization fundamentally believes that rural Pennsylvania is a great place to live, to start a business, to go to school, and to raise a family. But if rural Pennsylvania is to grow and thrive, it must have a strong network of broadband infrastructure that can connect our communities to the world of global commerce, but also the commerce of Main Street America. Like every industry, technology is fundamentally changing agriculture, helping farmers to be better stewards of their land and caretakers of their animals. But yet all of that technology relies on high-speed internet service. Modern agriculture facilities can be temperature controlled with smartphones and digital apps, but again, that relies on high-speed broadband service. Even something as basic as credit card transactions rely on high-speed internet service. So whether they're selling products directly to from the farm or building a modern agriculture facility, farmers need reliable internet service. The steps that the Broadband Authority will take in the coming months are going to lead to stronger rural resiliency and the capacity to grow businesses. So we're committed to working with all of you on the intelligent deployment of broadband service. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to share a few words. And again, thank you to the leaders in the General Assembly and to the governor that made a commitment to creating this Broadband Authority. And I'd now like to turn it over to Jason Bataleri, representing the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools.
Thank you, Governor Wolf, for inviting me to share the realities of broadband internet service that exist in rural communities across our Commonwealth. As superintendent of schools for the Wyalusing Area School District, a supporter of progression and an advocate of equality for all Pennsylvanians, I stand here today on behalf of my colleagues to highlight the disparity of high-speed internet that exists across our Commonwealth. With nearly 50% of Pennsylvania counties serving rural and remote communities, and the more than 200 school districts that serve Pennsylvania's rural school children, we're frustrated. Our children, parents, and their families have seen firsthand the failure, disappointment, and damage caused by the digital divide in our underserved communities. In the Wyalusing Area School District, with support from the Emergency Connectivity Fund, we have deployed 200 cellular hotspot devices to students and teachers' homes as a temporary Band-Aid for 20% of our community. Unfortunately, this is only a temporary fix, as we know that that funding stream will expire, and those households will once again be on the outside looking in, reverting them right back to an unserved status. These students will then experience homework gaps, missed assignments, and more importantly, have limited opportunity for self-discovery, research, inquisition, and will once again be at a competitive academic disadvantage when compared to other students. As a supporter of 21st century learning, it is alarming that still today, I hear the troubling stories of our rural communities where access remains unavailable. Where service is available, service interruptions, outages, and speeds that rival antiquated dial-up service are present. Even satellite service comes with a price tag that simply exceeds the financial capabilities of many families. The fact that this issue is still plaguing rural communities in our Commonwealth is simply unacceptable. Now, I'm sure nearly every Pennsylvanian has experienced a dropped cell phone call or experienced frustration with an internet outage. But imagine learning in that environment. Imagine working or running a business in that environment. Imagine not having access to conduct medical research or being denied equal access to quality doctors and mental health services that can be delivered through telemedicine. I've seen this firsthand when responding to a school bus accident where communication and emergency response was impacted because of connectivity barriers. We cannot allow a child's zip code to dictate the academic success of the nearly 2 million public school students of this Commonwealth. Failure to act will have devastating consequences that are likely to increase poverty, force young adults to leave the Commonwealth, and detract from future investment in Pennsylvania. This broadband infrastructure investment will foster jobs, promote entrepreneurship, and ensure first responders, doctors, and nurses have the ability to thrive in rural Pennsylvania. As educators, we are charged with developing students to be college and career ready, to ensure all learners have the employability skills to be successful, and empower students to be lifelong learners. 21st century learners want to collaborate with their peers, make connections with other communities, and develop relationships with future employers from around the globe. All of that requires connectivity. At Wyalusing, we have taken this responsibility seriously. We have made significant investments across our K-12 learning campus to ensure access by increasing internet broadband, internet speed, campus-wide connectivity both indoors and outdoors, and by providing free guest connectivity for the community. One telltale sign of the digital divide in our community is seeing parents who have children drive back to campus, now sitting in the parking lot, completing homework, researching tomorrow's school project, or completing an online job application. You see, we've left no stone unturned, and we have worked hard to ensure all reasonable efforts have been made to decrease the barriers for the entire community. But it's still not enough, and we're so appreciative that the time to act has come. Ensuring equitable access to reliable high-speed internet is absolutely essential for Pennsylvania's now and for ensuring our future. On behalf of our students, community, and the millions of Pennsylvanians struggling with internet access, we thank and support Governor Wolf and the legislators who work to ensure that this barrier is eliminated. Thank you. Governor?
Thanks, Jason. Okay, we'll take questions. When I say we, you're going to back me up here, right? Any questions? Yes.
Hi. Hey, do you have any sense of how long it's going to be before the authority can say people are actually getting hooked up that aren't hooked up? Is this like 6 months, a year?
There's a sequence, and I think the first checkoff point is May 16th, right? We have to have a plan to the federal, or we have to start, we can apply to get $5 million, I think, to start the plan. There are a lot of things that have to go into this. I'll let Sherry talk about what they're going to do, but we need to know where the need actually is. Right now, the FCC has prepared a map, but I think there's fairly universal agreement that we can do better than that. Even the FCC is saying that. So we will be looking at what the need is, and I think the rollout should start probably next year. But Sherry?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for that thoughtful question. I think, this gives me an opportunity to perhaps manage some expectations, quite frankly. I think part of the challenge is this. As the Governor mentioned, there are certain events that have to take place as it relates to the federal funding. We do need to develop a statewide broadband plan that will be submitted to the federal government, and that is something that we are actively working on. The first meeting of the authority, as we mentioned, was held earlier today, and that is some of the work that the authority will have before it in the coming months. But there are a number of events that have to occur before that funding actually comes into Pennsylvania and people are connected. Now, what I don't want to have lost in today's conversation is that there has been a lot of work being done across Pennsylvania. I know that Representative Snyder has certainly had some experiences in her region as it relates to some providers getting folks connected. We've certainly had some work being done in areas of Potter County, I believe, with Tri-County Rural Electric and Trico Connections, who are getting folks connected as we speak. So while there's a lot of work ahead of us, let's not lose sight of the fact that there has been a lot of work done. But this is going to take time. This isn't something that you get the federal funding, say, in October or November of this year, and people are connected by March of the following. This will take some time, and so I think it's important that we try to manage the expectations of others who have been waiting for this. We will be developing a forward-facing website at the Department of Community and Economic Development, and it's our intention to provide updates to that site that will allow folks across Pennsylvania to have real-time access to the flow of this funding, some of the important information that will be made available in due course. So we would certainly encourage folks to keep an eye out for that as well. Hopefully that's answered your question.
Well, you said next year. Is that a timetable you're comfortable with?
That's a great question. Let me answer.
Please.
Okay, I've been in politics for 7 years. I should know better than to, because the first thing I think you want to do is make all kinds of promises. I'm not sure if next year is right. We actually have been working on this for some time. It depends on how fast we get the money. My understanding is that doing what we did this morning, what the legislature did to set up this authority, we're moving quickly compared to other states. We're one of 27 states that actually had an office in the governor's office for broadband development. We've had that for, 5 or 6 years. So I think Pennsylvania is, what we've done so far is good. I'm sorry that I said next year. I'm not sure that I can actually follow that up. Any other questions? Yeah.
It's kind of a technical one. Does DCED need to hire more staff to staff the administrative functions?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. The staffing issue is one of the three main challenges right now. Sherry Collins is going to be serving as the acting executive director while the search for a new executive director goes on, or whatever, for an full-time executive director, I should say, and there will be other staffing needs that will be met by the authority, and that's in the hands of the authority right now. So I don't know, do you have a timetable for that?
Yeah, thank you. We are actively in the search for an executive director. As the governor mentioned, I'll continue to serve in that capacity until such time that individual is hired. We'll also be building out some additional staff appointments over the next couple months. So it is certainly something that is one of our most pressing needs right now, is to make sure that we have the appropriate staff at the table at the department to help with this funding deployment.
Do you have a rough number as to how many?
I would say a fair estimate could be anywhere between 5 to 10 new employees that'll be required. Thank you.
You should just stay up here. Any other questions for Sherry? Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you, everybody, for this. This is great.